Hello everyone, Camilla here from Decodable Readers Australia. Today we're going to use the data collection from the Sparkle Kit. Learn how to analyse that data and the best way to respond at classroom level. Now we're going to do this in two parts. Today we're going to have a look at the phonics knowledge and skills, and then we will have a look at that application at text level and looking at fluency and comprehension. So today is all about understanding phonics knowledge and skills. What I mean by that is in our Sparkle Kit there is a screener. That screener tests or evaluates the knowledge that students have of letter sound correspondences and then that application to word level. Can they apply that phonics knowledge at word blending level like VC, which is vowel consonant, it and at, to CVC, going from simple to complex. So CVC is consonant, vowel, consonant, then moving up to 4 sounds, 5 sounds, and even multisyllabic words. And that happens in our Sparkle Kit as you move up in the levels. So today, let's have a look at that phonics knowledge. I'm going to jump into my computer so that we can use a sample set of data. Here is our data collection spreadsheet. We're having a look at level 1. Before we unpack this data, let's have a look what the student gets and how the teacher records it. This here is the little screener that the child gets, and they say the sounds, both lowercase and uppercase. Then they apply that knowledge at VC level, then CVC level, and then it continues on as it gets harder and harder. Now, as the student is doing the screener, the teacher is collecting the data. Once you've collected the data, you can put it in your spreadsheet for analysis. So let's jump in and have a look at that. Today we have a sample class all set up. This is the spreadsheet that matches the Sparkle Kit. This is where we can add that data as well as analyze it. Now, because of the embedded formulas, it turns the boxes either red for not achieved and green for achieved. And this is really going to help you analyze the data and respond accordingly. Now you can see all of the skills from our letter sound correspondence to our word reading as it builds in complexity can be added in here. Now, just as a sample so that you can see, I'm going to add something to student 26 and just a capital Y for yes achieved, or let's say they didn't achieve the it sound, and N will turn that red. So as we go along, we add that data, they've achieved all of that, and just here the totals will be calculated as well. Now, from this data, from the totals, you can see whether you need to progress or not. If students have gaps in their letter sound correspondence knowledge, they're really not going to achieve the word blending because they haven't got those foundational skills, or should I say knowledge, to be able to apply that to the skill of blending. So we have to start back at that foundation. And we're going to have a look at this data and see the type of activities that we can implement to help those students that have those deficits. Once you've collected all the right data and you have a good understanding of where your students sit in regards to their phonics knowledge and their blending skills, it's time to respond to that data. Now, this response can be tier 1, which is whole classroom instruction, if there's a whole class need for something that needs to be explicitly retaught, or if you need to respond at a tier 2 level, and that's really pulling those students out that have a similar need and responding to those needs. Now, we're going to show you how to do this and how to analyze that data, but you can actually use our SOR toolkits, that's our Sounds of Reading toolkits, across any level. Today we're going to have a look at level 1, but all of our toolkits have the tools that you need to be able to respond to your data. Now, here I have our level 1 with all of the equipment and tools that you need to respond to that data. But most importantly is our handbook. Our handbook has the activities in it as well as step-by-step instructions for the educator. And these activities are really going to help those students with their phonics and their blending skills because it's all based on synthetic phonics. Once you get to the analysis phase, you can use this data set to start working out what type of response you require. You can see here that student 2 requires a lot of explicit teaching and practice of all letter sound correspondences. Now, depending on what you know of that student is how you would respond. Perhaps this student may have just come to your class and hasn't been taught explicitly those letters and sounds. Maybe this student has a learning difficulty that you are already aware of. Maybe this student is non-English speaking. So depending on the background knowledge of your student is how you would respond. Now, for this student, they would most likely require a one-on-one intensive intervention to help them not only learn the letter sound correspondences, but then the application to word level. Now, when we have a look at the rest of the data, you can see here that there is a common thread between the A and the IT sound. Now, what you would do is pull out those students in particular and do letter sound introductions, making sure that they could produce the sound as well as recognize the letter that represents that sound. And it sounds like that there's a bit of confusion with those short vowels. So lots of work around those two short vowels, A and IT. You can also see here that maybe the capital A, the formation of that letter, is causing confusion. And you could also do a small group instruction on that as well. While you're doing that small group instruction, you have students that have already achieved that knowledge, and even at skill level, they may be practicing in partner reading, they will be using decodable books of level 1 and practicing at fluency level of decoding those words, and we'll get to that very shortly. Now let's have a look at the types of activities that you can do on letter sound correspondence. In our SOR toolkits, you'll see our phonics cards. These are the teacher cards that allows the teacher to explicitly introduce the letters and sounds. It has the lowercase on one side and the uppercase on the other side. And no matter what level you get, you'll get all of the sounds that are introduced in that level, as well as the sounds that have been previously taught. Now we're having a look at our level 1. So this means that we have our sat pin sounds. In our level 1, we actually get 2 sets because there are words that we will need double letters for. For example, pip has 2 letter P's, so we have 2 sets. Now, these are used for explicit teaching, for practice activities, and it has all of the information for our educators in the handbook. Now, most importantly is how to even introduce and pronounce the graphemes and the sounds, or should I say the sounds that the graphemes make. Now, this talks about manner of articulation. I say that and I mention that because often, especially for students that are having difficulty, they're not pronouncing that sound correctly. And so this gives educators the tools to make sure that they are delivering the right content. For example, P is a voiceless sound, yet we often hear it being pronounced as P. It doesn't have that sound, and that's going to be an implication later on for your more vulnerable students beginning to blend. So our handbook is a great place to start. In your toolkit, we have our sound phones. That way students can actually hear the pronunciation of the sound and hear it as they speak it, travel up into their ear, and it really amplifies the sounds that they are making. Now, little mirrors are great too, to check that the articulation is correct and to see themselves and see their educator producing the sound, and that way you can help with that correction of sound as well. All right, so once you've explicitly taught the letters and the sounds, in our handbook we have a few different activities that we're going to explore. The first activity is our sound swap games. Using the sound swatter and little phonics cards that you get in your SOR toolkits, the educator calls out a sound. Now focus in on those sounds that students haven't got so that they can consolidate that understanding. Now with that, you can have both your lowercase and your uppercase depending on what your data is telling you. But students love being active with the sound swatter and the cards, and eventually the sound swap can be used to swap words when they get up to word level. The next activity is our reading racetrack mat, and this can be used at sound level and at word level. Now using the teacher phonics cards, and depending on what sounds that your data is telling you to focus in on, put these cards onto the reading racetrack mat. Also make sure that you have done that explicit teaching first and then pop them on, and every time they jump right next to that sound, they have to articulate the sound. The faster they go, that memory retention will happen. So having fun, being active while learning your sounds is a great tool to use in the classroom to consolidate letter sound understanding. It's now time to look at our word blending data. We're going to start here at our VC level. You can see here that this remains blank, no data collected, and that's because these students had such a large gap in their letter sound correspondence knowledge that we didn't waste the time to assess word blending if they haven't got the letters and sounds. So it's really important once you have explicitly taught those letters and sounds that you begin at VC level, and I'm going to show you some activities that you can do at VC level. Now those students that have started blending but have a few little errors, this is a great starting point as well, and we'll talk about the types of activities, even the types of words to use at this level. If we move up a little bit, our next section is our CVC. Now we do use nonsense words over here as a part of assessment. We certainly don't use them in teaching. It is just a way to check the application of letters and sounds on words that they haven't seen before. So to check whether they can apply that knowledge to unknown words. So here we can start to see there's a couple of extra students just having a little bit of difficulty with CVC. So we're going to talk about the types of activities to use with those. So we're going to differentiate our instruction and show you some of those activities that are best suited for those. As we move up, we've got data here that shows the CCVC level, and to analyze that data and see how many students that we need to do that with. Now that could be a larger group activity because we can see here that there's quite a few students that require that, but you certainly wouldn't use these students here at CCVC level yet until they have built up in complexity to that level. And you can see here even harder, there are some students that require activities at that harder level at CCVCC, that's 5 sounds. So using this data, let's have a look at the types of activities that you can do in your classroom to accommodate and respond to your data that looks something like this. Let's have a look at these word blending and segmenting activities. All of these activities can be differentiated to match your data. If you have students requiring more work at VC level because they are beginning to blend or they're having struggles blending, we've got the perfect activities. If you've got students well and truly on their way to blending and need that little bit of extra extension, we have the word list and the activities to build from CVC words to CCVC, that's those consonant clusters, 4 and even 5 sounds, even within our level 1, so that we can offer that differentiated approach. All right, let's have a look. If you've got any students that are just struggling with blending to begin with, I highly recommend starting orally. In our handbook, we have phonemic awareness activities that offer blending and segmenting activities, and all of the word lists are there. Now, if they're having problems with blending, we highly recommend starting with words that have continuance. They're those stretchy sounds that students find easier to blend together when they can hear it almost being co-articulated. What I mean by that is words like sat has a continuant sound to begin with. Sat, sat. Okay, so we've got our phonemic awareness activities. Once we've done that and we have an understanding that our students are ready to blend with the graphemes, we can start to word build. So we've got our blending board here. Now, if you're starting at VC, you use this side, and students will pull down the sound counters based on how many sounds they hear first. So they'll pull down it. Then they'll hear those sounds, they'll find the matching grapheme and build the words. So this is a word building activity. If they're past CVC, you can turn over and get a little bit more complex. All right, so we also have our word cards. Our word cards are differentiated as well. It starts at VC level, it and at, and there's 40 word cards. It moves up, even character names using capital letters, all the way up, and we've got words even with a consonant cluster like the word snip. So we have 40 word cards, and you can sort them and use the words that you require based on your data, depending on the student's needs and what they need further practice in. So that's our word blending activity. We've also got our Fluency Reads. Now, this is where we want to practice and pick up the speed. Once they're blending, rather than going it every time, we want them to get to the stage where they are reading the word it, or really quickly it, at, in, and. So these are our VC words. Then we get a little bit harder at CVC. There's some more CVC. So CVC with continuant sounds, if those students are having a difficulty, that's the best list for them. These are our stop sounds, so it's a little bit harder to blend together at CVC. Then we go to CCVC or CVCC, so those consonant clusters, 4 sounds, and then some more 4 sounds, right up to really tricky, which is 5 sounds. So you can see even with our fluency cards, these can be differentiated and targeted based on the data that you have collected. All right, from there we have some extra just fun consolidating activities. So for example, our spy words, completely invisible cards, and we've got our spy torch. When you spy that word, the student can start to read it. The great thing about our spy cards is the torch can focus on each sound as they're blending those cards to read. On the back are our hidden words, so they read the word at, then they shine the invisible light to see what the word is, and it could be pat or sat, and they use the torch to discover it. All right, the next one is our word SWOT. So instead of sound SWOT, we got word SWOT. So they have to quickly identify the letters and sounds that make up those words. So our SWOTers are great as well. All right, so there are a few of the activities that you can do. I forgot to mention the reading racetrack. To get really proficient and fast and getting speedy at reading those sounds and those words, we use these word cards on our reading racetrack map as well. So a whole range of activities from our SOR toolkits to really target the teaching, the explicit teaching, as well as the practice in order to respond to your data. Lastly, I want to mention the power of daily review, and you can even target your daily review activities. Now, it's really important that students get daily practice of these skills. In our online library, we have our daily review lessons that go right from learning the phonemes and the graphemes all the way to sentence level writing. Now, depending on your data is where you can target your daily review, and all of this can be found in our online daily review lessons. But it's really important that students have that daily exposure and practice, especially at word blending and word segmenting using the graphemes, as well as then applying that to text level reading. So there you have it. No matter whether you're analysing level 1 data or any of the other levels within our Sparkle kit, it's really important that you collect that right data and respond accordingly. And that may mean a whole class tier 1 instruction where you have to reteach certain skills or knowledge,
or whether you're pulling out students based on their needs and using our SOR toolkits, our Sounds of Reading toolkits, and the activities that are designed in there to respond to the skills and knowledge that they require. Now, we all know that early intervention is the key. Let's not wait till the end of the year and collect that summative data. Formative data is exactly the way we need to go. Little pit stops along the way to check in to see if that retainment of knowledge and skills is there, and then the application of that. Now, join me next week because we're going to have a look at the next part of our data collection, and that's that application to text level, looking at our fluency rate as well as our comprehension. We're going to gather that data and learn how to respond accordingly. Join me next week.